Welcome back to the top 100 trades in NBA history. If you haven't seen part 1, I recommend you check it out. In that video, I go over the rules and also the first 25 trades in the ranking. Without further ado, let's dive right into it. At number 75, we have Pau Gasol to the Grizzlies. We're looking at a trade here from a franchise that is just 6 years old at this point and has never won more than 23 games in a single season. This team was desperate to land a superstar talent, so taking a risk, they traded away Shareef Abdur-Rahim, who had consistently scored 20 a game for the Grizzlies, as well as Jamal Tinsley, in exchange for the number 2 overall pick Pau Gasol, Lorenzen Wright, and Brevin Knight. And this was the right move. Pau immediately became the face of Memphis basketball. He won Rookie of the Year, he became an All-Star, and led the Grizzlies to their first ever playoff appearances after being a team that was at the bottom of the league year after year. This franchise was struggling. In Pau's first year, they had relocated from Vancouver to Memphis, but by Pau's third year, they had won 50 games and made it to the playoffs. Without the acquisition of a star talent like Pau Gasol, who knows if the Grizzlies franchise would even still exist today. Next up, we have Pistol Pete Maravich to the Atlanta Hawks. This is an old one, the oldest trade we've had on this list thus far, but Pistol Pete is still remembered to this day for being one of the most skilled basketball players of the 1970s. With his impressive ball handling and jump shot that was way ahead of its time, Pete Maravich began the foundation of his Hall of Fame career in a Hawks uniform. A little under 2 months before the draft, the Hawks traded away Zelmo Beatty in exchange for Clyde Lee and the 3rd overall pick, which they used to draft Pete Maravich. Now granted, Pete Maravich and his time in a Hawks uniform did not lead to any playoff success, but it did give them one of the best scorers in the league. In his 4th and last season with the Hawks, Pete Maravich was 2nd in points per game. Pistol Pete is one of the most influential players the game has seen, and the Hawks were right to recognize a special talent like that ahead of draft night. Now at number 73, we have Dale Ellis to the Supersonics. Now we're all too familiar with the giant blockbuster trades in which a team picks up a superstar talent that is already established in the league. However, some of the greatest value trades in NBA history have been when teams pick up a talent before they become a star. And that's exactly what the Supersonics did here, because in 1986, in a 1-for-1 swap with the Mavericks, the Sonics traded away Al Wood, and in return they got Dale Ellis. Now what's so incredible about this trade is when the Sonics traded for Dale Ellis, he had just come off a season in which he averaged 7 points a game, and in his first season with the Supersonics, he averaged 25 points per game and won the Most Improved Player award, obviously. And as a player, Dale Ellis was also way ahead of his time, because in his best season in which he averaged 27.5 points per game, he also shot 48% from 3 on 4 attempts a night, which was the 3rd most attempts per game in the league at the time. And that 3-point percentage would be among the best in the league, even still to this day. So for picking up a guy who goes up 18 points per game when he joins your team and becomes the star of your franchise, this trade is pretty incredible. Next up, we have Carmelo Anthony to the Knicks. Now earlier I was talking about those giant blockbuster moves, and this one is definitely one of them, because the Knicks landing a superstar scorer to play in Madison Square Garden night after night, of course that's going to send shockwaves through the league. And since Carmelo was an established star talent at this point, this trade is a massive package. In a 3-team trade, the Timberwolves got Eddie Curry, Anthony Randolph, and a 2nd round pick. The Nuggets got Danilo Gallinari, Wilson Chandler, Raymond Felton, Kosta Koufos, Timothy Mozgov, 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, and cash. And the Knicks got Carmelo Anthony, Chauncey Billups, Corey Brewer, 2 players, and a first-round pick. Now, of course, this is a lot of assets to give up to get 1 player, but Carmelo Anthony's time on the Knicks was still unforgettable, especially his peak in 2013, when he led the league in scoring, led the Knicks to a 54-win season, and was 3rd in MVP voting. Unfortunately, the Knicks never saw playoff success, but what they did get out of this trade was an exciting product of basketball, because to this day, Carmelo Anthony still has the single-game scoring record in Madison Square Garden with 62 points. The large amount of assets given up and the lack of playoff success is why this trade isn't higher on this list. But this trade is still excellent for bringing one of the most exciting and iconic superstar eras of the 2010s. Now at number 71, we have Rudy Gobert to the Jazz. Now we know Rudy Gobert today as a perennial Defensive Player of the Year candidate and one of the most elite traditional big men in the league, but going into 2013 draft night, he was just seen as a late first round draft pick talent, except maybe the Jazz, because on draft night they traded away Eric Green and cash to the Nuggets in exchange for the draft rights for Rudy Gobert. And they really got their money's worth for this deal because Rudy Gobert won 3 Defensive Player of the Year awards in a Jazz uniform. He also led the league in rebounds one year, led the league in blocks in another, made 4 All-NBA appearances and 3 All-Star appearances. This trade landed the Jazz a defensive anchor and a franchise cornerstone. And a little under a decade later, the Jazz traded away Rudy Gobert for multiple first-round picks, which in hindsight makes the deal that landed him on draft night all the more impressive. At number 70, we have Donovan Mitchell to the Jazz. We have back-to-back trades here from the Utah Jazz trading up on draft night to land a star talent that nobody expected to be as good as they were until they played basketball in a Jazz uniform. And funny enough, this trade is also with the Nuggets. The Jazz traded away Trey Lyles and the 24th overall pick in exchange for the 13th overall pick, which they used to draft Donovan Mitchell. And following this trade, Donovan Mitchell erupted into one of the most dynamic young scorers in the league, averaging 24 points a night in his 5 seasons with the Jazz and 3 All-Star appearances. And although the Jazz didn't see playoff success, Donovan Mitchell was no stranger to having 40 or 50-point games in the postseason, and he definitely delivered some historic playoff performances in a Jazz uniform. Once again, the Jazz saw a sleeper draft talent that they knew they had to trade up for, and once again, it paid off. At number 69, we have Jrue Holiday to the Celtics. To me, the trades that lead to true playoff success will always be ranked favorably, and that's exactly what this trade did. The Celtics were willing to give up Robert Williams III, Malcolm Brogdon, and 2 first-round picks in order to get him, which is a fairly large package, but you could argue that this move was what got them over the championship hump because in his first season with the Celtics, they won the title, and it was Jrue Holiday's elite defense that was really a difference maker for the Celtics roster. Being one of the best defensive guards in the league, his impact went far beyond the box score, which is what made him the 3rd best player on this championship winning roster. With this deal, the Celtics landed an elite 2-way guard that elevated an already contending team by making winning plays and anchoring the Celtics' backcourt defense. Up next, we have Earl Monroe to the Knicks. This is another example of a trade in which a team acquires a talent that elevates the team and pushes them over the championship hump. When the Knicks acquired him, Earl Monroe's best years were behind him, so all they gave up to acquire him was Mike Riordan, Dave Stallworth, and cash. These 2 players were non-factors for the Knicks, but Earl Monroe was. He was a key piece on a well-rounded Knicks roster that won the championship in 1973, and he had continued longevity, making 2 All-Star appearances late in his career as well. Again, landing a championship difference maker is going to get you onto this list, and that's exactly who Earl Monroe is. There's a reason he's in the Hall of Fame. Coming up next, we have Kevin Love to the Cavs, the trade that created the Big 3 following LeBron James' return to the Cavs. After a really bad 2014 season, the Cavs landed the number 1 overall pick, and instead of drafting the top prospect Andrew Wiggins, they did a 3-team deal in which the Sixers got Luke Maamute, Alexei Shved, and a first-round pick. The Timberwolves got the 1st overall pick Andrew Wiggins, Thaddeus Young, and Anthony Bennett, and the Cavs got Kevin Love. Kevin Love was one of the best bigs in the league for the Timberwolves, and although he wasn't quite at that level for the Cavs, he was still a pivotal piece for a contending roster. Also, you can't give Kevin Love much credit for the 2016 Finals victory because if you look at the stats, he did not play too great, and that was mostly a carry job from LeBron. But beyond that series, Kevin Love was a part of 4 NBA Finals appearances and made the All-Star game twice as a Cav. Between that or young Andrew Wiggins, I think it's pretty clear they made the right move here. At number 66, we have Tracy McGrady to the Rockets. Houston paired T-Mac with Yao Ming, instantly creating one of the most exciting duos in the league. They didn't exactly buy low on him because at this point he had just led the league in scoring 2 years in a row in his last 2 years for the Magic. But somehow still, they got him for a really impressive package. They traded away Steve Francis, Cuttino Mobley, and Kelvin Cato, and in return they got Tracy McGrady, Juwan Howard, Tyronn Lue, and Reece Gaines. Pairing McGrady with Yao Ming transformed him from somebody that was scoring a lot of points for a bad team into somebody that was still scoring a lot of points, but this time for a 50-win team year after year. Sadly, this Rockets team could not make it past the first round, but that doesn't change the fact that McGrady was still one of the best guards in the league in a Rockets uniform, and with no first-round picks or star players in the deal, they got him for a pretty good package. Next up, we have Deron Williams to the Jazz. Not everyone hears the name Deron Williams and thinks of a star talent, but there was a time in the NBA where it was a legitimate conversation between Deron Williams and Chris Paul for who is the best point guard in the league, and that time for Deron Williams came during his time with the Utah Jazz. He was one of the best playmakers in the league, and also in his best years was capable of giving you 20 a night. The Jazz, recognizing this star young talent, actually traded up in the draft to get him, giving up the 6th, 27th, and 30th overall pick in exchange for the number 3 overall pick, which they used to draft Deron Williams. For the Jazz, Deron Williams progressed into an all-NBA talent, while the Jazz team itself progressed into a legitimate threat in the Western Conference, their deepest playoff run being the conference finals when Deron Williams was just 22 years old, but he was a legitimate contributing factor. Playing the first 5 full seasons of his career for the Jazz, he averaged 17 points and 9 assists in those years. In hindsight, to land a guy like that, trading up in the draft was a great move. At number 64, we have Vince Carter to the Nets. The change of scenery that was necessary to unlock Vinsanity once again. Although at this point, Vince Carter had already established himself as one of the league's most electric scorers, and also the face of the young Raptors franchise, which, despite Vince Carter's best play, was still not able to make the playoffs or even come close to it really. So the Nets traded away Alonzo Mourning, Aaron Williams, Eric Williams, and 2 first-round picks to the Raptors in exchange for the star Vince Carter. This trade paired Vince Carter with Jason Kidd, forming one of the most elite backcourts in the league, and although this trade didn't bring the Nets back to the finals where they had been earlier in the decade, it did bring national attention with highlight plays night after night, which is exactly what you expect out of Vince Carter. For ushering in one of the Nets' most exciting eras in their franchise history, it was worth making this move to land him. The next trade on our list is the move that landed Ray Allen to the Supersonics. Seattle took a swing on an elite shooter entering his prime, and it paid off because in his 4 full seasons with the Sonics, he was an all-star in all 4 years and averaged just under 25 points a game while also shooting 39% from 3 on 8 attempts a game. There's a reason why we view Ray Allen as one of the greatest 3-point shooters of all time to this day, and his era with the Supersonics has much to do with it. To acquire him, the Sonics wisely gave up their franchise cornerstone Gary Payton, whose all-star years were just beginning to run out. They also gave up Desmond Mason, and in return, they got Ray Allen, Ronald Murray, Kevin Ollie, and a first-round pick. To land the face of your franchise and get a first-round pick in the deal, I don't really know how that happens. Either way, the Sonics made an excellent trade here. The next trade we have is Bernard King to the Knicks. This is a trade that landed the Knicks one of the best scorers in the league, or the best scorer in the league if you look at 1985, in which Bernard King got the scoring title, averaging 33 points a game. However, that's not even his most impressive year with the Knicks, because the year before, he was the runner-up for the MVP award, carrying much of the offensive load for a Knicks team that made it to the playoffs and took the Dynasty Celtics team to 7 games in the Eastern Conference semifinals. In that series, he averaged 29 points a game and shot nearly 55% from the field, proving that he is not somebody who dwindles in the playoffs. They traded Michael Ray Richardson and a 5th-round pick to acquire him, which was not that much. Even though King battled with injuries, this trade was very much worth it. The next trade we have is another Jrue Holiday trade, except this time to the Bucks. It was Holiday's time in Milwaukee that taught the Celtics that Holiday elevates teams into championship contenders. However, with Milwaukee, Holiday was even more of an elite two-way wing. With his 3 seasons with the Bucks, he averaged 18.5 points and 7 assists, and made the all-defensive team all 3 years with the Bucks, proving himself to be one of the best backcourt defenders in the league. The trade to acquire him was massive. In a 4-team trade, the Nuggets got RJ Hampton, the Thunder got Kenrich Williams, George Hill, Darius Miller, 2 players and a first-round pick, another ridiculous Sam Presti trade. The Pelicans got Steven Adams, Eric Bledsoe, 2 first-round picks, and 2 first-round pick swaps, and the Bucks got Jrue Holiday and Sam Merrill. The difference Jrue Holiday made is shown by the fact that in his first year with the Bucks, they won the NBA championship in 2021 because even in the games where he wasn't able to score the ball, he was still a strong playmaker, elite defender, and made winning plays. Not to mention the fact he was still the 3rd scoring option on this Bucks roster. Again, this is a move that brought the Bucks into a championship level team, and there are no better moves than the ones that bring championships. At number 60, we have Kevin Love to the Timberwolves, another Kevin Love trade. We talked about how Kevin Love wasn't exactly at his peak form when he played for the Cavs. However, Kevin Love was one of the most dominant big men of the early 2010s. And these prime years were spent with the Timberwolves after on draft night in 2008, the Timberwolves traded away the number 3 overall pick OJ Mayo, Antoine Walker, Greg Buckner, and Mario Jaric in exchange for the number 5 overall pick Kevin Love, Mike Miller, Jason Collins, and Brian Cardinal. The Timberwolves simply had better sight here of who was the better prospect. OJ Mayo never developed into anybody that was contributing for the Grizzlies. Meanwhile, Kevin Love averaged as much as 26 points per game in one season with the Timberwolves, while also leading the league in rebounding one year with 15 rebounds a game. He also made 3 All-Star appearances and 2 All-NBA teams. The Timberwolves during this time were notorious for making bad moves on draft night, but with this deal, they got it right. The next trade we have is Ray Allen to the Bucks. A lot of recurring players on this ranking, but a trade is always more impressive when instead of an established player in the league, the player that's being targeted is an unestablished young prospect. And that's exactly what the Bucks did on draft night in 1996 when they traded away the 4th pick Stephon Marbury in exchange for Ray Allen, who was the 5th pick, and a first-round pick in 2000. It's even more impressive when you're trading down for the guy that you want. Anyways, Ray Allen exploded into a star talent as soon as his 2nd year into the league when he already was averaging almost 20 points a game. And unlike his time with the Sonics, Ray Allen actually saw some playoff success with the Bucks, being just 1 game away from the NBA Finals in 2001 in a conference finals series where he played his heart out, averaging 27 points a game and shooting the ball really efficiently. Also during his time with the Bucks, Ray Allen was very athletic and actually demonstrated a really strong slashing ability. I know he's known for his 3-point shooting, but I recommend you watch a Bucks Ray Allen highlight reel. It's pretty sick. But anyways, this was an excellent draft night move by the Bucks, and it kicked off a Hall of Fame career. Next up, we have Jermaine O'Neal to the Pacers. I said it in part 1 when I ranked Ron Artest to the Pacers that this era of Pacers basketball is largely remembered for the malice at the palace. But many people forget that Jermaine O'Neal was an MVP candidate at his peak form and led a Pacers team that was a legitimate title threat in the Eastern Conference. However, what's so incredible about this trade is that when they traded for him, he was 4 years into his career and had never averaged 5 points per game in a single season. So in the deal, all they gave up was a solid big named Dale Davis, and in return, they got Jermaine O'Neal and Joe Klein. 2 years later, and Jermaine O'Neal won the Most Improved Player award. And 2 years after that, he ranked 3rd in MVP voting, marking one of the fastest player transformations in NBA history. In that year where he was an MVP candidate, they were also 2 games away from the NBA Finals before losing to the eventual champion Detroit Pistons. I would say the motto for making good NBA trades is buy low and sell high, if at all. And this trade is one of the best examples we've seen of buy low. At number 57, we have LaMarcus Aldridge to the Trailblazers. In this ranking, we've seen and will continue to see trades in which teams spot a draft prospect that they like and make the right move to acquire him while they're still unestablished in the league. Those trades usually provide great value, and this LaMarcus Aldridge trade is a perfect example of it. On draft night in 2006, the Trailblazers traded the number 4 overall pick Tyrus Thomas and Victor Krajapa in order to land the number 2 overall pick LaMarcus Aldridge and a 2nd round pick. Following this trade, LaMarcus Aldridge spent nearly a decade on the Blazers, which includes most of his prime years, because in 4 of these years he was an All-Star, and in 3 of these years he made an All-NBA team. Despite being a big man, LaMarcus Aldridge was one of the best mid-range scorers in the league, which is why he led the league in 2-point attempts per game 3 years in a row. But even with the volume of shot attempts, LaMarcus Aldridge was still efficient, and his brand of basketball alongside Damian Lillard helped the Blazers make multiple playoff appearances and be one of the best teams in the Western Conference year after year. Could you have hoped for a conference finals appearance at least? Yes. But that doesn't change the fact that this was a draft night steal that landed the Blazers one of the league's best big men for nearly a decade. Coming up next, we have Brad Daugherty to the Cavs. Another draft night trade here, except this time it was for the #1 overall pick, which you think would cost a hefty package. However, all they gave up was a fellow named Roy Hinson and cash. Because at the time, Roy Hinson looked like a rising young star. He just averaged under 20 points per game and he was just 24 years old. However, Hinson only played one full season with the Sixers, averaging just under 14 a night. Meanwhile, Brad Daugherty spent his whole career, which was nearly a decade for the Cavs, racking up 5 All-Star appearances and making the Cavs one of the strongest teams in the Eastern Conference year after year. Like any other contending team in the Eastern Conference, this team got bested year after year by the Michael Jordan-led Bulls, but they did still get impressively close. In 1992, they won 57 games and were 2 games away from making it to the NBA Finals. This trade was a bit risky, but it paid off, landing the Cavs their big man centerpiece for the entirety of his career. The next trade we have is Mark Price to the Cavs, a trade that actually happened on the same night as the Brad Daugherty trade, the 1986 NBA draft night. However, the difference is that Brad Daugherty was the #1 overall pick. Meanwhile, Mark Price wasn't even seen as a first-round draft talent, so all they traded was a 1989 second-round pick in order to acquire Mark Price. What him and Daugherty do have in common is their impact on this Cavaliers team, because Mark Price made multiple All-Star appearances and All-NBA teams, even the All-NBA first team in 1993, and still to this day, Mark Price is one of 9 players to make the 50-40-90 club in a single season, which is a testament to his efficiency and the brand of basketball he played that was way ahead of his time. Mark Price is underrated. He's underrated for not being talked about enough as one of the best guards of the 80s and 90s, and he was underrated as a draft prospect, which for the Cavs meant landing him for an incredibly cheap package. This trade was absolutely stellar. The next trade we have is Bob Love to the Bulls, the new oldest trade we've had on this list thus far, and if this is a name you haven't heard, you may wonder why it's on this list. Well, think of it like the Jermaine O'Neal trade, because at the time when they made this deal, Bob Love had not yet averaged more than 7 points a game in a season, but in his best year with the Bulls, he averaged 26 points a game and made the all-defensive team. So it's another one of those examples of buy low trades where a player sees immediate transformation in their new uniform. They gave up a guy named Flynn Robinson in order to get Bob Love and Bob Weiss, which is a cheap package to land a guy who made 3 All-Star appearances and 3 all-defensive teams. Landing Bob Love was an absolute steal for a guy who was dominant on both ends of the floor. At number 53, we have Alonzo Mourning to the Heat. Much of Zoe's stellar Hall of Fame resume was built in a Heat jersey, which includes 5 All-Star appearances, 2 Defensive Player of the Year awards, and being top 3 in MVP voting 2 seasons in a row, coming really close in 1999 when he averaged 20 points, 11 rebounds, and 4 blocks a game. The trade to acquire him included trading away their star wing Glenn Rice, Matt Gager, Khalid Reeves, and a first-round pick, in exchange for Alonzo Mourning, LaRon Ellis, and Pete Myers. Being paired with Tim Hardaway made this Heat team one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference, their best season coming in 1997 when they won 61 games and lost to the Michael Jordan Bulls in the Eastern Conference Finals. His legacy as one of the best defensive bigs to ever play the game largely comes from this Miami Heat era. If you're a Heat fan, you can't have enough good things to say about Zoe. This trade was an absolutely great pickup. The next trade we have is Maurice Lucas to the Blazers. Again, if this is a name you're unfamiliar with, then you might be wondering why it's on this list. However, in my ranking, I will be putting trades that are championship difference makers, and in his first year with the Blazers, they won the championship in 1977, and Lucas was the team's leading scorer in this series, despite this being a Bill Walton-led team. The year before, Maurice Lucas was playing in the ABA, but then the ABA disbanded, and there was a dispersal draft for the players that were coming over from the ABA to the NBA, and the Blazers traded for the second pick in this dispersal draft to draft Maurice Lucas and traded away Geoff Petrie and Steve Haas. This pairing with Bill Walton is what made the Blazers a championship team, and beyond averaging 20 and 10 a night, Maurice Lucas was an all-defensive team caliber player, and the Blazers were right to make a move to acquire a talent like this, and they have their only championship in franchise history to show for it. And for the last trade before we enter the top 50, we have Khris Middleton to the Bucks. If there are two types of trades that I am biased towards, it is trades that win championships and trades that are buy low. And this trade is a perfect example of both of those. In the trade to acquire him, Middleton was basically a throw-in piece when the Bucks traded away Brendan Jennings and in return got Khris Middleton, Brendan Knight, and a guy whose name I will never be able to pronounce. At this point, Khris Middleton was spending most of his time in the G League, but over the years, Khris Middleton built his way up into the second scoring option for a contending team. And in his best 4-year stretch between 2019 and 2022, Middleton made 3 All-Star appearances and won a championship with the Bucks, averaging 24, 6, and 5 in the final series and being the co-star that Giannis needed to get them over the hump. The Bucks continued to benefit from this trade over a decade after it was made, because Middleton played 11 full seasons with the Bucks and was a part of multiple deep playoff runs. Again, I don't even know if the Bucks knew when they made this deal that they were landing a player that would be forever remembered in Bucks franchise history, but regardless, Khris Middleton went from a G Leaguer to the second option on a championship team and an All-Star. No doubt, Milwaukee got the bang for their buck here.